Should Amazon, Etsy, eBay run from the new kid on the block, Temu? They're coming. We've talked about them here. They're spending a lot of money. The last report that I heard was $2 billion in just Meta, which is basically Facebook and Instagram. And Chris, I know that there was another article just published not that long ago that's talking about this right here, about e-commerce platforms like, well, the big ones, Amazon, Etsy, eBay, and should they be running scared?
And this one comes to us from e-commerce Bytes, Scott. And if you guys aren't familiar, great little resource just to keep caught up. But the philosophy behind this, Scott, and you and I have talked about the massive ad spend that Temu has had. And in fact, one of the other things that we considered talking about and sharing today was an article talking about the market awareness of Temu. And so you just brought up, like, are you living under a rock? Please let us know in the comments below, right? If you haven't heard of Temu, you're probably missing out. And e-commerce Bytes leads the article off by saying Temu is the dollar store of online platforms, which is even funnier given the other topic that we talked about covering, which was a comparison of Amazon, Temu, and Dollar Tree, and the different products that you could find on all three of those platforms. But the purpose of this article is asking, should sellers on these platforms be running scared, given the advertising numbers that are going on? We're talking about $2 billion just on Meta. So far in 2024, they're expecting Temu to spend around $3 billion. And I can pretty much say it's going to be more than that if just their Meta spend last year was around $2 billion, right? Meta would be Facebook, Instagram, and maybe something inside their little Quest headset there. But realistically, Scott, given everything that we know about Temu, we know that they don't have the customer loyalty yet. People will go there, they'll try it, they'll buy once, but they're not necessarily coming back and buying again and again. And coming at this from another e-commerce site, we know that people come back to Amazon again and again and they buy,
Sure.
Maybe not from the same seller. We know that Etsy customers come back to Etsy again and again. And actually they favor coming back to the same seller over going back to the search results, which can be a mess on Etsy. And eBay, if you have an eBay customer, right? eBay people love buying on eBay. So in your mind, given the spend, given all of the news around Temu, all of the free coverage that they're getting, including right now where we're talking about them, should sellers on other platforms be afraid of Temu's existence? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, my thoughts are this, like, you can't ignore Temu. And I've said this before when we've talked about Temu, is like right now, I think the big rub for a lot of people is, number one, they feel as it's China that's coming here to grab all of the customers, that these platforms have, which we may be selling on, right? If you're selling on Amazon, if you're selling on eBay, if you're selling on Etsy. And so we can't ignore it, okay? But the question is, do we start selling on Temu platform? And right now, I do not think that that's something that we would ever entertain, but I'm not going to say never, because I've learned a long time ago that you should never say never, because you could do it eventually if things change. The one thing that wasn't mentioned in here though is TikTok shops. TikTok shops, like, they're coming, man. And so TikTok shops, they're really, really starting to dominate repeat customers. And we also did another video recently where we talked about how they're number 2 to Amazon for repeat loyalty to a brand, which is pretty remarkable. But do I think that we should be worried? No. Do I think we should pay attention? Yes. And here's what I mean. Them doing this is only going to make these other platforms aware, and they're going to have to make adjustments. They're going to have to start paying attention to their sellers and keeping those sellers, happy. It's also going to have to keep their customers happy. So that means that if Amazon rolls out a new thing for customers, guess who else benefits if you're selling on Amazon? You, the seller. Same thing with Etsy. If Temu rolls out with something, well, Etsy is probably going to pay attention and go, well, we need to compete here, so we're going to have to offer this faster shipping or whatever, which we've already noticed that Temu is actually doing that. They're looking at Amazon as the role model or as the big brother. And they're like, hey, they're offering same-day shipping or 2-day shipping, let's call it, because that was the big thing when they first rolled that out for Amazon, was like 2-day shipping. How are they able to do that? They add more warehouses in more states so they can make it easier to ship faster. Now they're doing it where you can get it in the same day. So Temu has already made the adjustment there to help make it an easier buying decision where they're going to offer quicker shipping, right? How are they going to do that? They're putting warehouses in just like Amazon. So right now, the way that I look at it is it's disrupting the platforms and they're going to be battling it out. But as e-commerce sellers, we can also look at this as an advantage because if new things roll out because they're trying to compete with this one or that one, we could benefit as a seller. That's how I'm feeling right now, Chris.
And it's funny, as you get further down in that article, our good buddy Steve Chu gets a 2-paragraph shout out about
that a boy, Steve.
The comments that he's made on this. And I think one of the things that I pulled out of this article was actually a video that Steve made after you and I talked about it, which was for Etsy sellers specifically, right? China is being opened back up to sell on Etsy. And you used to, as a Chinese seller, be able to sell directly on Etsy, but Etsy's opening up their platform for Chinese sellers again. And so if you're looking at this from a, oh my God, I have to compete against China standpoint, I'm terrified of Temu. Well, that could be a downstream consequence of the market share that Temu has taken from people, but it's something you're going to have to compete on any platform that you have. And Scott, I liked where you were kind of going with this, which is, okay, customers are not necessarily running in droves to Temu. They might, they're going to buy it, they're going to try it, and then they run into the shipping issue, or they run into a quality issue, or they run into a fraud or a scam or something like that. If Temu can solve that problem, then they are competing essentially on level playing ground with your Amazons, your eBays, your Etsys. So at that point, do we view them as competition or do we view them as another place to play? Right now, I don't think I would be putting my products on Temu, but if they can solve that issue and they have the market share, then there's a compelling argument to be made, at least from the seller side, that maybe we should consider it. But I don't view that as something to be running from. I view it as something that we should be keeping an eye on for sure, from more of the opportunity perspective. I welcome competition, be it within the Etsy platform, be it on Amazon, be it on my own website, because competition makes everything better. And if they can turn themselves into a real competitor for Amazon, that actually creates more opportunity for sellers as well as more opportunity for buyers. So it's not something I would be running from. It's not something I'm running towards right now either. I'm kind of looking both directions on it going, okay, here's all of the problems that they have. Here's the potential effect that they could have in the future. If they can solve these, then maybe I come back and reconsider that decision in a few years when they've solved those problems, if they've solved those problems. But I would say, despite the billions of dollars that they're spending, even though they are starting to make up some ground, unless they can figure out a way to solve the customer retention issue, which is something Etsy is trying to solve this year as well, they're not going to be something to be massively worried about. They're not going to erode everybody's businesses. If anything, it's going to be another opportunity for sellers to sell on if they can resolve those early stage trust issues.